Good evening, everybody, and welcome to J Street's Democratic Convention Kickoff. We're going to be getting started in just a couple of minutes, so hang in there while we let everybody into the Zoom and people sign in, and we will get started in just a minute. Good evening and good afternoon, depending on your time zone, and welcome to J Street's 2020 Democratic National Convention Kickoff. It is great to be here with all of you, although I am sort of sad not to see many of you in person in Milwaukee. We, of course, we're all looking forward to being together, and this is, of course, a challenging time for all of us on many scores, and so I'm very pleased and grateful to all of you for joining us this evening. I know we'll have several hundred folks who are coming in and out. We've had these kinds of receptions at Democratic conventions over the last several election cycles, and I have very fond memories of seeing many of you in Denver in 2008, beautiful outdoor bar and cafe kind of a place, and I remember 2012 in Charlotte and restaurant in the middle of the downtown area in 2016 at the Museum of Jewish History in Philadelphia. So lots of good memories, and I'm sorry that we can't be together. We will have a wide range of great people stopping by to say hello. We'll be doing a little discussion with Jan Schakowsky and Dan Shapiro about the changing nature of politics on our issues in the Democratic Party, and that'll be coming up in a few minutes. And we've got folks like Senator Tammy Baldwin and Mark Pocan. We've got a heavy Wisconsin representation for a Milwaukee convention, so it's great to have them joining us, and many other guests are going to be stopping by. So settle in, get comfortable, grab a drink, something to eat, and enjoy the next hour and a half with us. 2020, the beginning of the year, we set for ourselves 3 organizational priorities. Number 1, we said we have to defeat Donald Trump and get a new president into the White House, and that is beyond clear that remains our number 1 priority. 2, we said we have to stop annexation from happening, and really very pleased by the developments of the last couple of days with an announcement that appears to be at a minimum on hold, at least for the time being. And 3, we said we want to establish our voice as the majority voice from the Jewish community and the pro-Israel community in the majority party in the coming years. And that's where the work with the Democratic Party and the Democratic platform comes in. We also had 3 political priorities this year besides defeating Donald Trump and now electing Joe Biden. We want to flip the control of the Senate and have a pro-diplomacy, pro-peace pro-Israel majority in the Senate, and similarly in the House of Representatives, we want to defend our champions who we elected in 2018 and took the majority, and actually we have a shot at increasing that majority. So those are our priorities, and heading into the convention this week, I'd say there's good news on all fronts. There's a lot of work still to be done, of course, on the front of defeating Donald Trump, but he does appear to be somewhat on the ropes. Annexation is on hold, and our views are emerging as the center of the democratic discussion when it comes to Israel and the Middle East. We're definitely seeing within the Democratic Party a new mainstream consensus emerging. It's a consensus that is strongly supportive both of Israel's right to security and to the U.S.-Israel relationship, and to the need for Palestinians to have their freedom and their rights and a country of their own. The Democratic Party is expressing the idea that both sides need to be held accountable for their actions, and that we need to press both if we're going to have genuine progress toward lasting peace and stability in the region. This is a shift in the Democratic Party on our issues, but I'd say that it's also a shift within the party more broadly when it comes to progressive diplomacy-first foreign policy. A Democratic Party that I think in the 2020s is shaping up to be far more highly skeptical of hawkish and belligerent approaches, whether towards Iran or on this issue, and pro-diplomacy and support for the State Department, for aid programs, and for other approaches to national security. I want to highlight that on Tuesday, we're going to be joining together with a number of other progressive foreign policy organizations under the umbrella of Foreign Policy for America at 4:30 for a discussion on progressive foreign policy in the 2020s with Senator Chris Murphy, and I hope that many of you will join J Street and 6 or 7 other of our partner organizations then. On our issue in particular, as we head into this convention, a party platform is going to be ratified that includes major notable victories for our movement, including advocacy for a more even-handed U.S. policy towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a platform that for the first time includes explicit recognition of the right of Palestinians to live in freedom and security in a viable state of their own, along with explicit opposition to Israeli settlement expansion and to unilateral annexation. It's a wholehearted embrace of diplomacy, and it is a rebuttal against a military force first approach to national security. We see across the party the political space is being opened up by J Street for progressive, pro-Israel, pro-peace, and anti-occupation voices. And we're so excited about some of the new potential members of Congress who have won their primaries and are heading into battles this fall. We believe that the Congress is shifting rapidly in our direction with a growing set of allies for J Street in both the Senate and the House. So there's lots of good news for J Street politically as we head towards what we hope, and I think we can all pray and we can raise a glass to, is a new administration that will take office in January of 2021 and a new Congress that promotes peace, democracy, human rights, and security for both Israelis and Palestinians. The key to that, of course, is electing Joe Biden as president of the United States, and J Street is proud to have made our first ever presidential endorsement of Joe Biden in this cycle. And we're going to play a very quick clip for you of Vice President Biden speaking at our conference in 2016. When the video is over, I hope that we will be joined by Senator Tammy Baldwin, and I'll introduce her at that point. So let's roll the video.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's great to be back at J Street. I'm here first and foremost, and I mean this sincerely, to say thank you. Thank you for the support that so many of you have privately, including the honorees tonight, who have given me my whole career. But thank you for supporting the Obama-Biden administration during the past 7 years. And for all the work, and I don't mean getting selected, many of you did do that, but beyond that, I really mean this. For all the work you did to be the voices of reason on so many extremely controversial issues, for all the work you do across the country. And that extends the full range of causes that we all believe in as Americans, in the community here in particularly. Expanding access to health care, fighting inequity, and extending basic protections to more people, rebuilding a fundamental economic bargain for all Americans. And this organization's very existence proves that there's no contradiction between being progressive and being pro-Israeli.
It's exciting for us to be supporting Joe Biden and looking forward to hearing his remarks this week at the convention, to supporting him in the campaign this fall, and then to working with the Biden administration beginning in January of 2021. And with that, it looks like I can now see the wonderful senator from Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin. She has been a senator since 2013, but endorsed by J Street, actually, ever since 2010 when you were a House member, and then in your Senate race and then for re-election. Senator Baldwin has been a real champion for J Street throughout her time in both the House and the Senate. And in this Senate alone, she supported our two-state resolution, Resolution SRES 234, in favor of two states in the Senate. She signed on to the Van Hollen Murphy-Cain anti-annexation letter. She supported the amendment that Senator Van Hollen introduced on aid use restrictions related to annexation to the National Defense Authorization Act. It's such a pleasure to have you with us, and we only wish we were with you in person in your home state, Senator Baldwin.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, and thank you to all that are joining us tonight for this Welcome to Wisconsin virtual reception. I wish you were all here too, and you're welcome anytime. You know, we never imagined when we won the bid for the convention that we would be in circumstances like this. But I am actually glad that our Democratic leadership, including the example set by our hopefully soon to be President Joe Biden, is one that focuses on public health and safety and the well-being of all participants. But welcome virtually to Wisconsin. I really want to appreciate all that J Street has done in our long friendship and allegiance. I was so proud in my first race for the United States Senate to get the endorsement and support of J Street, as well as in my re-election effort. But I also want to just share a little bit about what the emergence of J Street meant to me as a policymaker who views myself as pro-Israel, pro-peace, pro-diplomacy, and all the things you were mentioning, Jeremy, in your opening remarks. Because for a long time, it felt like there wasn't a safe space, if you will, to have those conversations. And there was oftentimes a strenuous effort to use foreign policy generally, but Middle East policy specifically, as a partisan wedge issue, which it should never be. In fact, I will remember that when I first came to the House of Representatives before my election to the Senate, we had a freshman orientation, and we had a session on foreign policy. And the presenter at that foreign policy said, welcome to the House of Representatives, where partisanship ends at our shores. And it was so quickly after that that I saw partisanship begin to seep into foreign policy, and it became more and more profound. And so I can personally express to you how overjoyed I was when J Street was organized and began growing, and as you say, Jeremy, is quickly becoming the premier voice of pro-Israel, pro-peace people in the United States of America. And so I just want to thank everyone who is a participant, who's attending this virtual caucus meeting before the convention kicks off. you should take credit for that important role. It's really, really vital. And it also, now you have the opportunity to also create that safe space for campaigns and new candidates. And you can see that. I think you're going to hear from one of our US Senate candidates later in your meeting. And you'll see an example of the work that you've been able to accomplish. And knowing that people have your back when you say bold, pro-peace, pro-Israel things. So I got a chance to listen in on your opening, and I just want to congratulate you on coming so far on the top 3 missions that you had for this session of Congress and this election cycle. We are obviously building a strong movement to addressing the first issue, which would be putting a strong person with foreign policy chops and diplomacy background into the presidency. And obviously we still have a lot of work to do. This is a convention about nominating, and we still have until November 3rd. But that sort of work of exposing the damage that Donald Trump has caused to the US on the national stage, and talking about how many of his moves, especially with respect to Israel and the Middle East, have made things worse, not better. Whether it's starting with taking America out of the Iranian nuclear agreement, or whether it was doing things unilaterally without real negotiation that would have led us in the same path to the much more recent threats of annexation, which, as you note, in just the past couple of days, we've had some good news that the pause button at least has been pressed, but the work is still ahead of us. And I also just want to say that I'm so glad you mentioned the importance of flipping control of the United States Senate. So I have no higher mission in Wisconsin than making sure that Wisconsin goes for Joe Biden. We don't want to be the state that we were in 2016, where Trump narrowly wins and the Electoral College is, the math, if Trump wins Wisconsin, the math just doesn't work out. We don't have any Senate races in our state this year. So I have also been focused around the country on our opportunities to elect pro-democracy, pro-Israel, pro-peace candidates that respect our former stature in the world, and are going to be dedicated to make sure we rebuild that stature. I think we know that Joe Biden's motto in terms of his agenda is Build Back Better. We often think of that as a domestic policy motto, but it can absolutely be applied to all of our interactions with the rest of the world. And we can lead once again, and J Street is going to be an enormous player in making that happen. So I'm so delighted that you are participating in the Democratic National Convention 2020 and virtually participating as supporters and active participants in J Street. Thank you so much for having me stop by.
Thanks so much, Senator Baldwin. I just wish in these Zooms that you could actually hear hundreds of people applauding and cheering for you, because we love you very much. We respect everything that you stand for and do, and we're proud to be partners in supporting you. So thanks so much for opening this up for us, and have a good convention yourself.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Terrific. Okay. Thanks so much to Senator Baldwin. And we've been joined as well now by Ambassador Dan Shapiro and Representative Jan Schakowsky. I know we're just getting them both on video. Dan has the requisite solid blue button-down Oxford shirt that one has to have for these things. And there's Representative Schakowsky. Wonderful. It is great to be joined by two wonderful and longtime friends of mine personally, and also of J Street as an institution. Representative Jan Schakowsky, you all know, is one of the longest standing J Street champions, one of our first endorsees from 2008. She is a congresswoman from Illinois, and she has been a leader in the House in all of our activism, whether it is against annexation, where she was the co-author of the Schakowsky Deutsch Price Schneider letter, signed by 191 members of the House opposing annexation, or on issues that relate to village demolition, home demolition, settlement expansion, and more. We're also joined as well by Ambassador Dan Shapiro, who has, of course, been the U.S. ambassador to Israel from 2011 to 2017. That's when we actually had an ambassador from the United States to Israel that represented American interests rather than the other way around. And he was also on the National Security Council in the early part of the administration. We first met him, I think, on the campaign, perhaps even at that first reception in 2008 in Denver. And he's currently a distinguished visiting fellow at the Institute for National Security Studies in Tel Aviv, and was a member of the Democratic Platform Committee, which drafted the document we were talking about earlier. So welcome to you both. And I want to ask you both, since this is, of course, a political convention, it's not a policy conference, and I want to focus first on the politics that, or the intersection, let's say, between politics and policy on issues related to Israel and foreign policy for the US when it comes to the Middle East. Dan, if you think back to the transition into the Obama years in 2008, 2009, there simply wasn't an array of different voices, let's say, at that point. The field was a little bit different, and I thought perhaps you might be able to talk a little bit about that. And Jan, I thought perhaps you could tell us a little bit now, over the course of the decade that J Street's been around, your perception of the change in Capitol Hill, because now we're going to be heading into the 2020s. And I said in my opening, our hope is that the pro-peace, pro-diplomacy, pro-Israel perspective that J Street represents is now going to really be a shaping force in Democratic Party policy as it emerges as the majority party in the coming decade. So if you two could each take about 5 minutes and offer some perspective on that, that'd be terrific. And Ambassador Shapiro, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, Jeremy. It's great to be with all the J Street participants from around the country. I'm in Israel, so it's late here, but wherever you are, good afternoon, good evening. And Congresswoman, it's always an honor to share a days with you. There's no question there was once more of a consensus, I think, or there still is, I hope, on the value of the U.S. partnership with Israel and the way it advances U.S. interests. And that really advanced during the Obama-Biden years. We strengthened our relationship in many respects, in security, assistance, Iron Dome, an MOU at the $38 billion MOU in military assistance, intelligence sharing, joint military training, and in many other ways to deal with common threats. What there also was, but maybe is less of a bipartisan consensus, was on the only possible outcome that could end the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and that was a two-state solution. That was not a partisan issue. Toward the end of President Clinton's administration, it was informally adopted early in George W. Bush's administration. It was formally adopted as policy. Of course, it was policy through the Obama years, and it always had bipartisan support in Congress. And there may have been different flavors of where one placed responsibility for the lack of success in negotiations and for various disruptions that obviously meant it was not successful. What I'm sorry to say is that there's been an increasing degree of partisanship around this. Senator Baldwin was just talking about how partisanship used to stop at the water's edge. And that was the case, but increasingly we find that the issue of a two-state solution is, again, the only possible way this conflict can be resolved, is disputed by some of our friends on the other side of the aisle, chiefly the President of the United States, who spent 3 years refusing to utter those words. When he finally used them in his plan in January, it was not a serious description of a two-state solution. It was Israel annexing about 30% of the West Bank and Palestinians being left with some isolated islands of limited autonomy. So that's unfortunate. At the same time, there has been, I think, a strong, real strengthening of the consensus within the Democratic Party to support Israel, its security, the U.S.-Israel partnership, and a two-state solution is the only solution that will bring peace to the end of this conflict. Again, one might find different flavors of that between centrists and progressives within the parties, but the two resolutions that passed in the House of Representatives in the last in this past Congress, the current Congress actually, are testament to how broad that consensus goes across the party. The fact that 191 members of Congress signed a letter against annexation, many more who didn't sign it would have, but didn't for various technical reasons. Congresswoman Schakowsky, thank you for your leadership. J Street, thank you for your leadership on that very important letter to say, look, annexation is completely incompatible with two states. And of course, the platform that you referenced, I think also is a demonstration of where there's a great deal of unity. Again, not everybody agrees with every single word, or people had different ideas, but I think if you really look at where the very, very broad consensus understanding is, it's right there in that document. Strong support for Israel's security and legitimacy, strong support for the rights of both Palestinians and Israelis to be recognized for security, dignity, self-determination, and that can only be done in a two-state solution, and holding both sides accountable for their responsibilities to advance that and not to do the things that make that harder. So I'm sorry that this issue is more of a political football than it used to be. It shouldn't be. That's really not in our interest. It's not really any proper way of being a friend to Israel as well. But we see some of that coming. I do have to give J Street a lot of credit for helping the progressives in our party define their flavor of speaking up for the U.S.-Israel relationship, for a two-state solution, for the security, dignity, self-determination of both Israelis and Palestinians, and for Israel's Jewish and democratic character. And for the fact that, as that letter demonstrated, the best friends of Israel can also disagree on certain policy choices Israel makes and can speak up and say so. And that doesn't in any way lessen their commitment to all of those principles that I articulated. And there's responsibility on both sides, and that's also part of it. So thank you to J Street for really helping our party, for helping the progressive elements within our party, but all of us keep our eye on the prize, keep that focus on that only one possible resolution to this conflict, a two-state solution in which both Palestinians and Israelis' rights and needs are met, and that's the best thing for U.S. interests.
Thanks so much, Dan. And Congresswoman, let me give you the floor.
As I've said to you many times before, J Street really changed my life. I came to Congress. I was elected in 1998, came to Congress in 1999, and there was not the same kind of space there is now created by J Street for a robust discussion about Israeli policy, U.S.-Israeli policy. There was always just one answer, and that was that Israel is always right. And you had to sign a letter committing to that. There was a lot of pressure in that regard. So while we said at that time that a two-state solution was the policy, and it was for a long time, of the United States of America, it was said over and over again, that in fact we saw a diminution of a commitment to that over the years. What J Street did was, and I again go back to what the senator said, created the space for the kind of conversation that we could have. What was good for the United States, but what is also good for the state of Israel? And J Street has been loyal to the idea of a two-state solution through thick and thin. And we've been at thin right now, but I don't believe that I know that the majority of American Jews agree, that the majority of Americans agree that the only equitable solution for Israel and for the Palestinians is to have a two-state solution. So I am just grateful. I found my home early on in J Street. J Street helped me in a campaign where unfortunately the issue was who's really pro-Israel. And clearly for many, I was not. At least for my opponent, I was not. And J Street came in and endorsed me. And those were days where it was a little risky to some extent to have a J Street endorsement. That has completely flipped. As I've told you, Jeremy, I get calls all the time from people, well, can you put a call in for me to J Street to get their endorsement? I said, well, you know, you have to be on the right side of things and we'll see what we can do. Everyone on the Democratic ticket wants to be endorsed by J Street, or almost all. So I tell you, I was just thrilled to be part of an effort to bring the almost entire 191 members together, people who have been more conservative on Israel policy, those who have been more progressive, all together to say no annexation. And this was after we had earlier passed this resolution, as the ambassador said, that reinforced the idea of a two-state solution, that we keep repeating it, and I don't think we can say it enough. But this letter was very clear that the idea now of annexation is so counterproductive to bringing the kind of solutions that we want, that was expressed by 191 members. And then I want you to know an additional 10 who didn't sign the letter actually had statements of their own that essentially said the same thing. So the vast majority of the Democratic caucus was willing to step forward and say no annexation. I do want to make the point that while, yes, Jeremy, it's a good thing, or maybe Dan, you said that the annexation is set aside for the time being. Netanyahu has made it very, very clear that he has not abandoned the idea, that this is a temporary stop. And so even for the remainder of this administration, we're going to have to continue, I believe, to fight for that. But you have an army of people now, Jeremy, inside and outside the Congress that supports the J Street efforts and the J Street opinions, from young students who were part of J Street U, fighting against the demolition of Palestinian villages, who are working so hard to bring peace to the region in a way that's equitable for all. So I am just grateful every day for J Street. And I just want to tell you too, for all those who are listening, we have regular dinners with members of Congress who want to be and are active in J Street. And those meals at a Chinese restaurant in Washington, D.C. have gotten bigger and bigger. More virtual now than actual, but we are growing in force and influence. And now that the Democrats are in the majority in the House of Representatives, and after we get the Senate and Joe Biden as President of the United States, we can bring rationality back to this discussion and push once again as hard as we can for a two-state solution. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks so much, Congresswoman. It was quite a task to try to find delivery Chinese food for some of your colleagues when we did one of these virtually in the last couple of months all over the country. That was quite the...
I got Chinese food delivered to my house. Right. How cool is J Street? Come on.
So thank you both for those opening comments. We have about 5 or 6 minutes left. And I was wondering, you mentioned, Congresswoman, specifically the recent development in the last couple of days related to the UAE and Israel and beginning the process of mutual recognition and the suspension of annexation in return for that. And I think our folks would be very, very interested to hear from both of you in just a couple of minutes what your take is, not just on the specific agreement, but what it means in terms of going forward. Does it provide an opening, a platform? Would a President Biden be able to build on something like this opening and actually make something larger and more concrete? So perhaps, Ambassador, you might have a couple of minutes and then we'll turn it back to the Congresswoman.
Sure. Well, I welcome this agreement and this announcement. It's been a long-term bipartisan goal through all of those administrations I've mentioned to help Israel normalize its relations with Arab states. And that is something that we have worked on, and it's just and it's legitimate, and Israel can be a contributor and a beneficiary, and the U.S. benefits from having our circle of friends be friends with each other in the Middle East. Now, there was an Arab Peace Initiative that in 2002 suggested the sequence would be first a two-state solution and then recognition and normalization. Some Arab states, obviously the UAE at the front of the line, decided that because of the long period without success in negotiations, they didn't want to wait. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing for our ultimate goal here, which is both Israel's integration of the region and a two-state solution that ends the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In fact, in the first instance, the other major payoff of this announcement was that it shelved annexation. And it really did more than shelve it, it buried it. Now, I understand why politicians may try to tell their base that, well, I'm not really walking away from a commitment I've made through repeated elections. I've just suspended it. I'll come back to it later. This was a very solid commitment. I'm aware of some of the specific details of it. It would be a major, major embarrassment, humiliation, really, to the leader of the United Arab Emirates, Mohammed bin Zayed, if after really putting before Israel a very clear choice in the op-ed published in Hebrew by his ambassador to Washington, Yusuf al-Taiba, in Israel, which read, you can have annexation or you can have normalization, but you can't have both. Israel has to choose. And they did choose to then take the annexation, pocket it, and take the normalization, pocket it, and try to go back to annexation. That's not going to happen. They would really put everything at risk. They won't do that to the Trump administration in these remaining months. And once there's a Biden-Harris administration, Vice President Biden has been very clear that he opposes annexation, would oppose it as president as well. So I see annexation really as deeply buried now, and that's very welcome. So that's the first good thing. But the second thing is that a Biden administration really would restore the two-state solution as the central organizing principle of U.S. policy toward Israelis and Palestinians. Test every specific policy measure they would take, that if it advances that or if it harms that. Quite a reversal from Trump's walking away from it. And that includes restoring U.S.-Palestinian diplomatic ties, all the assistance programs that the law permits that were unnecessarily suspended and which weaken Palestinian institution building and Israeli-Palestinian security cooperation, reopen a consulate to Palestinians and the like, hold both sides accountable to unilateral actions that would make this harder. But actually, I think there is an opportunity to work with countries like the UAE, who will now be in a way able to influence Israel more because they will have this direct contact, the way Egypt and Jordan have, to be able to try to advance this goal, to be able at times to help pressure the Palestinians to take the decisions they need to make, and at times support the Palestinians with assistance and with diplomatic support. And as that circle expands, I believe that a creative and focused administration can actually capitalize on it. There's an opportunity to really advance it. The Palestinians may not feel that today. They may feel disappointment today. But I think if they'll look past that, they may see with the right administration willing to work toward this goal, there's an opportunity here.
Thanks so much, Ambassador. And Congressman, would you like to have the last word in this discussion? We've got a couple of minutes.
Let me just say, Ambassador, from your mouth to God's ears. I really hope for that kind of positive result. I think it's a little bit humorous that the Ambassador David Friedman calls it it's called the Abraham Accord, the father of all three great faiths: Christianity, Muslim, and Jewish. And then the president says he was joking, I guess. I wanted it to be called the Donald Trump Accord. Of course he did. But my concern is this quote from Netanyahu, who said, well, we received a request to wait temporarily from President Trump talking about annexation. It is temporary. It is temporarily postponed. It is not removed from the table. I am telling you that. Now, I think the one hopeful thing is that there's not a lot of time left, and we hope that we are going to have a very different administration that will begin where you said we should, which is with a two-state solution, and be able to incorporate the UAE and the new developments that we're having in the region, and make hay out of that and make it as a really positive thing. And so when he says it's temporary, so is the presidency, I believe, of Donald Trump. temporary. And so we'll be able to have take some advantage of it. Now, you know that the Palestinians have rejected it right now, and Hanan Ashwawi had a really powerful statement in her concerns about it, but as well as Abbas. But I think that I'm going to go with your idea, Ambassador, that on balance this is a good thing, and that ultimately it will yield a real positive result. But I'm sorry at this moment that we can't have any kind of step forward with the Palestinians themselves.
Well, thank you both for these really helpful remarks. It's just a little taste of the incredible thoughtfulness that each of you bring to these issues. And I know on behalf of the J Street community, if we were in a physical location together, there would be a lot of applause and cheering for you both as real friends and champions.
I can hear it.
Right, if you really strain, perhaps you can hear us, but thank you both for your friendship, and we look forward to working with you, hopefully in 2021 on a very positive and proactive agenda to move our issues forward. So thank you both for joining us, and we're going to move
support for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Thanks so much, Dan. Thank you very much, Congresswoman. And we are moving back to our Wisconsin theme for the next segment, and we are joined by Congressman Mark Pocan. And Mark is the congressman from Wisconsin's 2nd District. He's the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. He's been an endorsee of our PAC since 2014, and again, a real champion, somebody who has really been at the forefront of our efforts in Congress to not only pursue a two-state solution, but also to fight against some of the worst aspects of the occupation and what amounts, I think many of us would call de facto annexation, the day in and the day out creeping process of the loss of Palestinian territory and rights. And I know, Congressman Pocan, you've been a real champion on these issues, and I want to turn it over to you for a few words at this time.
Sure. Well, thank you very much, Jeremy, and thank you to J Street. I'm really glad to be here with you. I wish it would have been, as you just said, in person. We were really hoping for that in Milwaukee. It's a wonderful city. We would have loved to showcase it. It would be great to see everybody right now face to face, and instead, much of our lives are existing through Zoom. But this is just a very atypical convention. But this is also an extremely important election, and it's great to have this opportunity to speak virtually with all of you who are committed to defeating Donald Trump, to safeguarding our democratic values, and to making sure that we have a more secure future for Israelis and Palestinians. And again, J Street, I'm very proud to be a longtime friend and fan of all the work you've done. Your work over the last decade has been crystal clear about your true support for Israel and for the American interests. That means supporting diplomacy and democracy, international partnership, and human rights. And it's been clear that the long-term best interest of Israel and Palestine, the people of Israel and Palestine, that are not at odds at all. They're intertwined, depending on a peaceful resolution that reflects the needs and hopes of both sides. And you've been, as an organization, at the forefront. As Jan was telling stories about our Chinese dinner that we often have in DC together, and definitely growing. I think the last one, Jeremy, we were talking about putting a CODEL together, and I think you had 35, 40 members plus in that room. We pretty much filled it to capacity, but you bring that space where we can get together and speak our minds openly and honestly about the issues. You know, Jan mentioned that letter about annexation, and that was, I think, a very powerful letter that had a huge number of Democrats, 190 plus, signed that against the annexation that was going on. But, you know, I just want to let everyone from J Street know other things that we've worked with you on, and I've been very proud to have the ability to work with you. Alan Lowenthal, a representative of ours from California, had House Resolution 326, and that was to demonstrate the strong support for a two-state solution. You know, when I got elected, I never thought that we would need to restate our position on a two-state solution. And yet what's happened in the 7.5 years I've been there, we've watched this a really odd debate come up where we no longer have that be like the automatic position of Congress. And as you all know, we had some difficulties in making sure that we could get this up and have a vote. Your work was instrumental and essential to getting that done. And we were really glad that we were able to reiterate that position. Unfortunately, it was a very lopsided partisan vote, but I think the importance is that we had that vote and that debate on the floor of Congress, as I thought since I got to Congress always was the position. Also, you've helped us to restore humanitarian aid to Palestinians that President Trump slashed back in 2018. I serve on the Appropriations Committee. I was really glad to be a part of that process, but it was the work of J Street that made it possible so that we could get to a space to do what was right. Because again, what's best in the interest of that region is having the mutual respect for the peoples of Israel and Palestine. And I think that effort was really key. And I appreciate that so very much. You know, when you contrast that to the shared agenda of Donald Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, you know, they promoted illegal annexation and settlement expansion. They slashed humanitarian aid to the Palestinian people. They've deliberately undermined the prospects for their two-state solution, and they've pushed us towards the brink of conflict with Iran. And you know, the work of J Street has been essential to make sure that we have a meaningful peace, a two-state solution in the region. And when we elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, we will have a new pro-Israel, pro-peace majority in the Senate, hopefully as well. We can really take this policy work and move it forward to the next step. And I guarantee who will be involved will be J Street. Jeremy, you and the folks at J Street and your members have just been so important to the work that we're doing in Congress. I can't thank you enough. And as someone who's had your support, I appreciate it, but more had your support on the floor of Congress. You know, the policy work doesn't just happen without outside groups like yours, and you've been the preeminent group helping us to get this pro-peace agenda done. And I just wanted to pop on to say, I'm sorry we're not in person in Wisconsin. You would have loved it. Our beer is amazing. Many things are amazing. Cheese you can't match. But instead, I'm able to be here virtually. And I just want to thank you virtually for everything you do.
Well, thank you so much, Congressman. As I've said to everybody so far, I just feel so bad that you can't hear the appreciation from all of us. There's hundreds of folks on this Zoom following us on Facebook right now, and many, many fans of yours personally and the work that you do with the CPC and the leadership, I think the growing voice of the Progressive Caucus on these issues and standing up for what's right and fighting the important fights. And I think the tide is turning and you're at the forefront of it. So thank you again. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for the virtual hospitality in Milwaukee. And we look forward to seeing you in person at some point soon.
I'm handing you all a virtual beer.
Excellent. That sounds really good right about now. Thank you very much. All right. Thanks, Congressman Pocan. And we've been joined as well, I think, by one of your colleagues who is a real friend and a champion of Barbara Lee, Congresswoman Barbara Lee from California. I see your name pop up, but we don't see your video. So I'm just going to wait and make sure that we have visual contact with you. There we go. All right. It is wonderful to see you. And it's so great to be with you. And I think there's nobody in J Street who doesn't know Congresswoman Barbara Lee. She is just the voice of conscience in the Congress on issues related to foreign policy, related to peace, related to diplomacy. She, of course, has been an endorsee of J Street since the very beginning. I think that she holds the frequent flyer record with J Street for traveling with us to the region to see the issues and the people that we work on firsthand. And it's just so important. And not only is Congresswoman Lee going on the trip, she's leading the trip. She's helping us recruit and running the meetings with all of the interlocutors that we meet with. And so, you know, she has just been a tremendous ally. We were pleased at our conference in 2018 to award her our Tzedek V'Shalom Award, which is our Justice and Peace Award. And Congresswoman, I know that we would love to hear a few words from you about Israel-Palestine, but perhaps also even more broadly about the need to shift American foreign policy and the way that we think of our national security in a more pro-diplomacy and pro-peace way. So Congresswoman Barbara Lee. And we do need to unmute you. I don't know whether we do that centrally or here we go.
I just did. Am I okay? Okay.
You are.
First First of all, thank you so much for that very warm introduction, but also just thank you for your extraordinary leadership, to the staff, your board, to all of you who have worked to advance this pro-peace agenda. And I'm so glad my colleague, Congressman Pocan, called it that, because that is what it is. It's pro-Israel, it's pro-peace. It's an approach to foreign policy that seeks justice and a two-state for the Palestinian people and a two-state solution. So this is about peace. I had the chance to listen to Ambassador Shapiro and Congresswoman Schakowsky earlier, and I'm telling you, they were just right on point. I want to just thank them and all of our colleagues who are joining J Street in advance of our next session of Congress, and also during this session, because we have done so much work. And it's been because of you, Jeremy, that we've been able to do a lot of what Congressman Pocan mentioned. And also, I'm just a proud member of an informal group. It's called the Gang of Eight, you know, and it's a group that really is in support of a two-state solution and a pro-peace agenda. Now, you know, and we all know that we're in the middle of a crisis right now. The pandemic has taken so many lives. The worst economic collapse that we've seen in our lifetime, and the crisis of systemic racism that continues to hold our country back. And so on top of everything else, our democracy is threatened. You know, we're trying to beat back the whole effort to suppress the vote through trying to dismantle the Postal Service, the disinformation campaigns, and a president who's just openly attempting to prevent people to vote, safely in November. And so there's a lot of work that we must do between now and November. And we have got to remember, and that is why I'm so glad you're doing this during this convention, that we've got to remember it's strong United States leadership is also on the ballot in November. And J Street's work is so important. It is critical to that effort. I am proud, I think I was at the first reception at the beginning of J Street. And yes, it's been incredible, Jeremy, and to all of our J Street supporters to see how much you have grown and to see the work that you do, and the fact that, as Jan mentioned, so many members joined the letter on annexation. And this is not easy work, but you understand very clearly, J Street does the inside-outside strategy, and that's what we have to do as we move forward in this election, because we don't know what's going to come down the pike on foreign policy and on all of our issues that we champion with J Street. You know, you continue to support diplomacy, democracy, institution building, international partnerships, and human rights. And the Trump administration's foreign policy is just the opposite. Couple of things. You were so helpful in getting us to pass the JCPOA. And once again, the Gang of Eight and our speaker and many of us worked very closely with the Obama administration because we've seen this administration just unravel something that was important that prevented us from going to the brink of war. Now, this is shocking that they have just, in many ways, dismantled the work on nuclear non-proliferation and keeping Iran in check. But again, we have the election coming up. We've seen the results of settlement expansions, cuts in humanitarian assistance to the Palestinians, targeted efforts to undermine a two-state solution, all of this. We, of course, and Jan mentioned the news that hopefully the expansion, the annexation, would be suspended, but I really don't believe Donald Trump or Netanyahu in this effort. And so I think we have to be very, very vigilant, and we have to know that the movement toward peace, toward a two-state solution is only going to happen if we vote in November for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on November 3rd. I know because I serve as vice chair of the State and Foreign Operations Subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee. I see how this Trump administration brings forth budgets, brings forth cuts in appropriations measures that would actually restore our leadership in the world. Instead, through the appropriations process, they damage what we're doing in the world. And so we've got to turn this around. But J Street is going to help us organize around all of these issues. Thank you for being such an advocate in every which way. And justice is really on the ballot, Jeremy, this year. Justice here and abroad, here in the United States, justice abroad. And so I just think we need to keep that framework and that mindset as we move into the elections, because your work also, in addition to peace, it's about peace and justice. So thank you again. Thank you, J Street, for really giving us the opportunity to be with you. And believe you me, I am so proud of the work that J Street is doing. And we're going to move forward, and we're going to see peace in the Middle East during our lifetimes. I'm committed and determined, and I know J Street is determined that we're going to see that happen. Thank you again.
Absolutely. We are so with you, and just wish that you could hear the applause and the warmth for you and the appreciation. You've heard it at our conference, of course, when you got our award on justice and peace. And, you know, the relationship between us couldn't be stronger. And I just wanted to see if you have a moment for me to just ask you one quick question before you go.
Sure.
It was really so distressing to see the United States at the United Nations this week with a resolution that got all of 2 votes in an attempt to try to deal with Iran. The United States ended up standing alone with the Dominican Republic, and the entire rest of the Security Council voting against our approach. And now the administration making noises about trying to use a snapback provision in the JCPOA that will likely blow up the agreement forever. I'm curious what your take is on how we rebuild American leadership. How do we rebuild our place in the world? How do we recapture a place where people look up to us, respect us, as opposed to where we stand today?
Sure. Well, you heard me say I didn't trust Netanyahu and Donald Trump on annexation and what they said. And we see at the United Nations what took place. And it's outrageous. And so November, we have to vote first to begin this restoration and repairing the damage. But also, I believe, and I have legislation that would put us back into the JCPOA. And if we need to build on it, we'll build on it. But I think it's extremely important. And J Street, I want to thank you for helping us with that legislation. I don't have the bill number with me, but I think the first thing we have to do, Congress has got to vote to take the United States and place us back into the JCPOA. And so I'm going to continue working on this bill. We're going to build co-sponsors this year and for introduction again next year. So we need to start there. But also our work at the United Nations and with other countries throughout the world. I mean, this is going to be President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, along with our cabinet officials, along with the Congress. We're going to have to almost go country by country by country. And we're going to have to put us back into the Paris Climate Accord. There's so many. We're going to have to make sure we pay the dues to the World Health Organization. I could just cite chapter and verse of what we have to do first to repair the damage in order to position ourselves to be able to restore our leadership in the world. So we've got to clean our act up first. And at the same time, though, very carefully move forward on our pro-peace, pro-justice agenda.
Well, as Jan said to Dan Shapiro, from your lips to God's ears, you know, this is exactly what we need. We have our work cut out for us, and we will be following your lead in the next Congress. And hopefully you will be in a position of real responsibility to help the Congress to shape its policies. And we are so grateful for that leadership and proud to be your partner. So thank you very much for—
Jeremy, thank you again. And let me just say how proud I was to receive the award several years ago, because, you know, peace and justice is about who you are. It's about who I am. And that was a very humbling moment for me. And, you know, it was also a moment of pride, because I know J Street so well, and to think that you would present this to an African-American woman from Oakland, California, born in El Paso, Texas, it just was so exciting. And I look forward to going back with you to lead a delegation once more to Israel and to Palestine. So thank you all again.
Absolutely.
Shalom.
Shalom. Thank you so much. And all of the work that the Congresswoman is talking about and that we've been talking about so far is highly dependent on our ability to retake the Senate. in November. And this isn't a partisan organization. Our hope is that one day there will be Republicans again. We've endorsed Republicans in the past, and we hope there will be again. But right now, what we need to do in the Senate is assure that there's a pro-diplomacy, pro-peace, pro-Israel majority that can back up a senator, now soon to be, we hope, President Biden, and back up a House majority with the kinds of folks like Jan Schakowsky, Mark Pocan, and Barbara Lee, who you've just met. And that's why we have endorsed 12 challengers for the United States Senate in seats currently held by senators who have voted against the JCPOA, who have been against the two-state solution, who have not supported the kinds of initiatives and legislation and resolutions that J Street has supported. And at the front of that list is going to be our next guest, who I understand is just in the process of signing on, Cal Cunningham, who is running for the Senate in North Carolina against Senator Thom Tillis. And so while we're waiting for Cal to sign on, I do also want to just highlight for all of you some of the other things that J Street is going to be involved in this week. The convention itself, of course, starts tomorrow. This is our opening night reception. On Tuesday, we're going to be taking part in a multi-organizational forum on defining a post-Trump progressive foreign policy. We're doing it together with organizations like Foreign Policy for America and National Security Action, Win Without War, and others. And the guest of honor at that particular event is going to be Senator Chris Murphy, who, as I hope all of you know by now, is one of the leading voices and most thoughtful people in the United States Senate on the issues that we care most about. He's a newer and younger senator, a new voice on the Foreign Relations Committee, and somebody that I think you're going to be seeing a lot more of in the years ahead, and very much at the forefront of the kinds of views that J Street is involved in. In addition to Tuesday's event, we're also going to have an event on Friday. It'll be post-convention, because it's all well and good to watch the spectacle that will take place. It's a several hour-long infomercial, of course, but the real work starts Friday. And so we've decided to put together a post-convention debrief Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And on Friday's call, we'll be walking through all of the many different ways that you'll be able to plug in through J Street to help in this election, whether it is through virtual phone banks or virtual canvassing and texting, whether it's through some of our ongoing PAC fundraising, whether it is through meetings and informational and briefing meetings with candidates who are running so that they're up to speed on our issues. There's a whole range of ways to get involved in our work in this important election cycle. And so we have put the link, I believe, into the chat with the full list of our program. You have the Tuesday reception at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and then Friday noon, Friday 1 p.m. Eastern Time is the debrief and mobilization for action. I see that we have been joined by Cal Cunningham, and I'll wait to make sure that we actually can see him on video before I do a formal introduction here. And we will get started. There we go. Any second now. Terrific. Welcome very much, Cal Cunningham. We are gathered virtually together today, hundreds of us from around the country who would much prefer to be together in Milwaukee and with you under better circumstances. And it's really an honor, though, to be able to gather together with a whole host of our different champions for this cycle. Cal Cunningham, I think many of you on the call undoubtedly know the name by now. He is running against Thom Tillis in North Carolina. It's one of the key Senate and presidential battlegrounds of the 2020 election. One of the first Senate challengers that we endorsed this cycle. We've actually already directed over $200,000 to his campaign, and we're committed to doing much more and everything we can between now and November to help him win. Cal's a member of the U.S. Army Reserve who served both in Afghanistan and in Iraq. He was awarded a Bronze Star and the General MacArthur Leadership Award in part for his work pioneering prosecution of criminal contractor misconduct. He's been willing and a leader in speaking out on issues related to annexation as a candidate already, stating, quote, that unilateral action by Israel to annex land in the West Bank would deal a significant blow to our shared goal of a two-state solution and could damage long-standing relationships that are key to security. So thank you so much for joining us, Cal, and we look forward to hearing a few words from you.
Well, Jeremy, thank you. And thanks to all the wonderful J Street members and leaders who are gathering this way today. You're exactly right, Jeremy. I'd love to be with you in person. First of all, to just continue to strengthen those relationships that we've made along the way since this campaign started, but also so that I could really thank you all in person for your wonderful, not only support to the campaign, but the education that you've given me along the way is helping me find the space and the confidence to speak out on issues where we nurture our relationship with Israel, but we also make sure that we hold each other accountable. And I was very proud to join in the effort to speak out against unilateral action. And I think we hopefully are celebrating some of the benefits of that collective voice and that collective action with some of the breakthroughs this week. First of all, of course, stepping back from unilateral annexation, but also some normalizing of relationships, which can help, I hope, foster us in a direction of a two-state solution. So I'm grateful for all of the patience that this organization and the members have had with me learning how to speak out appropriately about how we foster those shared goals. And so just very quickly, I'll share with you, this is the front lines in the battle for the U.S. Senate. North Carolina is one of the must-win states, as you all certainly know, one of the core 4 states that we have to win in order to give our future President Biden and Vice Presidents Kamala Harris a governing majority in the Senate to help us move the country forward, and at an extraordinary time. Fortunately, with y'all's help and support, we have been both outraising the incumbent, we've been outpolling the incumbent, we've made at this point over 2.5 million phone calls to North Carolina voters talking about making plans to vote this fall, whether it's by mail or in person during our early vote period, all the things that campaigns need to do to succeed, and particularly in tough states like North Carolina. So the path forward is very clear. It's obviously going to be a hard-fought campaign. Just this week, $10 million was spent in this race. Just this week alone in the last 7 days, that's more money than any other campaign other than the presidential campaign. And not because we want it to be, but as I sit here this afternoon with you, we have set a new record for the most expensive U.S. Senate race in the history of America. But that's because Mitch McConnell knows we win here, we take the majority, and we're on a path to doing that with your help and your support. I look forward not just to the partnership over the next 79 days, but for the next 6 years. And I'm grateful to all of you for being a part, for taking a chance on a new guy, but also helping us win this extraordinarily critical race on the path to a new majority. Jeremy, thank you again, and thanks to all of the members here. Please, everyone, stay healthy and stay safe.
Thank you so much, Cal. I don't know if you've got time for a question before you go, and if you're on a tight schedule, we'll let you go. But if not, I think one of the things that's been so exciting for J Street and many groups that work on foreign policy is that in 2018 there was a whole slew of national security freshmen elected, and they became such an important part of the debate and the discussion. And when I look at you and your background, and I think about what you can bring to the Senate, I sort of feel a similar sense that perhaps this is a emerging trend here. And I'm wondering if you could just comment on how your perspective from having served and from having been so close to issues that are of deep interest to J Street, how does that play on the campaign trail? How does it work for you in being able to push back on some of the things that this president is doing, and how do national security issues play out for you in North Carolina?
Well, Jeremy, I can speak from a place of authentic experience, and here in North Carolina, we know all too well that when our diplomacy, our foreign policy, our national security policy goes awry, the phone and the president has to dial 911, and that can be a president of either party. When the president has to dial that 911, the phone rings in North Carolina at Fort Bragg, either for the paratroopers at Fort Bragg. And by the way, we're celebrating National Airborne Day today. I'm a proud paratrooper among my many other commendations and achievements. But the phone rings either for those paratroopers or the special operations troops. It can also ring for the Marines and the air wings at our Marine installations in the East and at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. So we very personally know that we need a foreign policy in this country, a national security policy that's worthy of the personal sacrifices that men and women in uniform may be called to make. And that when we fail to act in partnership with our allies, when we fail to strengthen and nurture the relationships we have with the countries we have the strongest bonds with, we are weaker in the world. We are not stronger and we're not safer. And so I think North Carolinians take very personally the need for us to engage the world, to be leaders in the world, to be partners for peace in the world. And most assuredly, Jeremy, to live out the values that we aspire and that we've written into the founding documents of our country. When we live out those values, we're stronger. And we know from the experience of the last 4 years that we've walked away from important alliances. We've made the world less stable. We've acted unilaterally and we've urged unilateral action. And these are things that do not make the world a safer place. They don't make America and North Carolina more secure. And again, when things go awry, it's North Carolina's troops that have to step up and go sort them out. So as I think about issues of war and peace, and I think about the importance of our relationship with Israel in a dangerous part of the world, I'll never fail to think about those consequential issues, except in terms of having to hug my wife Elizabeth, my daughter Caroline, and my son Will goodbye several times to go overseas to fulfill the nation's mandate. And I'll always weigh that very heavily.
Terrific. Well, I bet that this is why you are running so strongly in North Carolina and why we have a chance to take back the Senate with a case like that and with a background like that, and really appreciate your leadership and your commitment to the values of this country. And thank you so much for your service. Thank you for running. And we are there with you from now until November and beyond. So thanks again to Cal Cunningham. And as I've said to everybody, I only wish you could hear the applause and the thank you from all the hundreds of people watching on Facebook and Zoom at this point from our world.
Well, Jeremy, thanks again for the partnership and the relationships and the education and the confidence to speak up. It's a partnership for now and for the future. And thank you all. God bless and stay healthy and safe.
Terrific. We'll see you on the trail. Thanks so much to Cal. And we are going to be having a final visitor joining us, Senator Chris Van Hollen. He'll be joining us in about 5 or 6 minutes, I believe. And so I want to take the opportunity to introduce to the group the chair of J Street, who has been a partner in crime with me since the very, very first day of J Street's existence. Alexandra Stanton, who is known, I think, to the entire J Street world for her incredible leadership and energy and the excitement that you build in this movement. So thank you so much, Alex, and definitely want to hear a few words from you. Oh, and you have to be unmuted.
And aha, good.
Perfect.
Well, you know, partner in crime for sure, Jeremy, right? I mean, I've been on this board since the second month it was founded, and it's been an honor and a journey. Yes, to everyone out there, hello. I'm the chair of the board of J Street, Alexandra Stanton. I'm going to get to Cal Cunningham in a second. Gosh, he's great, isn't he? He's just bananas good. Look, over the last 12 years, J Street has organized pro-Israel, pro-peace Americans to promote U.S. policies that embody our deeply, deeply held Jewish and democratic values, and that aim to secure the state of Israel as a democratic homeland for the Jewish people. We, as you know, believe that only a negotiated agreement agreed to by Israelis and Palestinians can meet the legitimate needs and the national aspirations of both people. Through this work, we've created the space, the deeply previously lacking but now present political space for these extraordinary candidates and elected officials you heard from this evening to pursue a diplomacy-first path and approach to American foreign policy. So it's 78 days to go, and we've got the most important election of our lifetime. I feel like we say that now every election, and every election it's even more true. So the words sound not novel, but they feel new each time, and here we are. So look, our number one priority is defeating Donald Trump this November. We are so excited to support Vice President Biden and Senator Kamala Harris, and are committed to doing everything we can, including raising at least 7 figures, at least $1 million in support of their campaign to help them win and undo the horrific damage that Trump and frankly Netanyahu have done to the US-Israel relationship. But we know that defeating Trump is not enough. And that's why we are committed to transforming the US Senate by electing a new generation of leaders like Cal Cunningham, who will have President Biden's back. So just a personal note, about 8 months ago, Cal Cunningham walked into my apartment, and he walked in and he sat down, and with this unbelievable combo platter of pragmatism, reflectiveness, no sense of mastery, like he had to know everything, really asking questions. You know, that's attractive when someone asks questions when they just don't know, they don't claim to know everything. And as I sat there and watched him kind of ask questions and give reflections and talk about North Carolina, I thought to myself, he's it. That's it. That's the guy. That's the one. He's got to be the nominee. And you knew he had it when in those moments. And it's nothing very official, but it's a real pleasure to see him on the screen here with all of us on our Facebook Live event, Jeremy. It's been a journey, but he's kind of terrific. So anyway, J Street PAC is very proud to support candidates like Cal Cunningham for the Senate in almost every crucial battleground state. And we're going to make sure that this brand new majority is matched by an even bigger pro-Israel, pro-peace majority in the House of Representatives. Thanks to your support, we are backing, let me see, over 190 candidates for House and Senate in this cycle. That's huge. And we are on our way to raising well over $5 million in support of their campaigns and candidacies. So look, as we head into this last few months of the trail, I hope you'll join me and thousands of J Street members across the country in supporting our endorsed candidates, making phone calls, sending texts and letters, and doing everything you can to make sure that we have not only victory in November, but victory by important margins. So thank you for everything you're doing. And Jeremy, over to you.
Thanks so much, Alex. And we are just a couple of minutes away from Senator Chris Van Hollen joining us. And as Alex said, there are a whole host of ways that you can get involved in helping us out. We are going to post some of them on a slide here as we wait for Senator Van Hollen. And one of those ways, of course, is through our PAC, which you can find at jstreetpac.org, including Cal Cunningham running for the Senate in North Carolina, but 189 other candidates as well. We've got the opportunity to make calls through an incredible piece of software called Mobilize that we have personalized for our own use and for our candidates, mobilize.org. We have the opportunity to send get out the vote letters. We have the opportunity to be involved in a whole host of ongoing activities that you'll find out about at jstreet.org. So please do sign up, and every day we have a different activity that we have people ready to take. We called it 100 actions in 100 days that we announced 21 days ago, so there's 79 actions left to go, and we are going to be sprinting right through the finish line in November of 2020. So we are moments away from Senator Van Hollen joining us. I will probably stay quiet for a minute or two, which the several hundred of you who have been on enough of these Zooms with me know is probably a good thing at this point for my voice. And we will be right back with you in a minute or two when Senator Van Hollen is with us. Thanks so much. Terrific. Well, I have been told that Senator Van Hollen has joined us, so I will just wait for the screen to shift here so that we can have a visual as well. And I know that he will be joining us any second now. And while we're waiting, I'll just note that Nate has put into the chat that you can sign up for the emails that we provide with the 100 days, 100 ways to win. They're actually really amusing and fun emails. It's not just tasks for you to do, but they're kind of fun to read actually, and they come out every Sunday. So please sign up for that at jstreet.org/100. And good, the link has been put in, and you can also plan on coming to join us for our Friday debrief, 1 p.m. to hear more about that. So I'm not yet seeing Senator Van Hollen, though I was told that he is on, so I'll just wait for the visual confirmation of that. Just give us one more second. I believe that he's on. We're just adding him into the proper part of the Zoom. So give us one more minute here. I have to say, though, it was very smooth for the hour and 20 minutes there. We just were able to go back to back to back from person to person and quite seamlessly. So this is good that we've made it to the last segment here without any gaps till now. So this is a successful Zoom as we're all learning how to master these new skills in a new era. So I understand that there is a slight technical difficulty, and the staff is urging me to do what senators do so well, which is to filibuster for a couple of minutes while we try to figure out exactly how to get him on. Although I think there are many of us. Well, the good news is he's calling me on my mobile phone right now, so we can figure out a way to plug him in through my mobile phone. I don't know if I want to answer this live. I'm going to put myself on mute. I'm sure this is a lot of fun for folks to watch real time as we try to figure this out. There we go. I'm going to hang up. All right, now we need you to unmute. Oh, this is very exciting. So now we can hang up the phone. And this is great. 200 people here, a few hundred on Facebook watching us figure out how to make this all work.
Right.
So.
Well, listen, thank you all for your patience. I was screaming at my iPad here because I heard Jeremy saying I'd be right on, but he couldn't hear me. So let me just say to all of you, let me start with you, Jeremy. Thank you for your leadership, to Alexander and the board, and to all of you who are part of J Street. Thank you for really transforming the conversation about where we need to go and putting political energy behind the need for all of us to unite, behind the need to preserve the option of a two-state solution. That has been J Street's North Star from the beginning, and you have focused like a laser beam on making sure that we keep that option open, because I think we all understand that a two-state solution, and a viable two-state solution, is the only way to both preserve a Jewish democratic state and also make sure the Palestinians are able to pursue their legitimate rights to self-determination and full and equal rights. And so that's why it's so important for Israel, for the United States, and for the Palestinian people, and for people around the world. And J Street has been committed to that effort. And that has meant, of course, making sure that we defeat the idea of unilateral annexation, because that obviously would undermine a two-state solution. In fact, in my view, it would be the final nail in the coffin of something that is already been difficult to preserve. And look, we all know that there's plenty of blame to go around on all sides as to why we are where we are. The Palestinians are divided among themselves. They've been dysfunctional. But our goal, of course, is to preserve the two-state option as the only viable way to achieve those goals that I mentioned. And J Street has been an effective organization at doing it. And in my view, and I think the view of the majority of Americans, including the majority of the Jewish community in my experience, that is the pro-Israel position. That is the position that ensures that, again, we both have a democratic and Jewish state, but also recognize the legitimate rights of others. And one of the things J Street has shown is that simply being pro-Israel does not mean adopting the positions of the current prime minister any more than being pro-American means supporting the policies of Donald Trump. And, if anybody were to say to us that, somehow if you take on Donald Trump, you're not pursuing a pro-American agenda, we'd all say nonsense. In fact, quite the opposite is true. That's what this election is all about. And so it's important that we continue to fight for that North Star, the viable two-state solution. J Street's been essential. And of course, key to that is winning this presidential election. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will restore the integrity of the American foreign policy process overall. This president, President Trump, has eroded our influence around the world. He's undermined our credibility around the world. He's weakened us dramatically around the world because under President Trump, we have lost our standing. We've lost our focus on principle and values, which has been a very important part of American foreign policy. Not that we're perfect. We're far from perfect. But standing up for those values of democracy and human rights and self-determination have been a really important part of what has made us a leader in the post-World War II world. And Donald Trump has essentially thrown that out the window. So we need to make sure that we elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. We need a huge vote. And of course, we need a Democratic majority in the United States Senate as well, so that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris can have a real partner, not just in the House of Representatives, but also in the United States Senate. And we can not only reverse the damage that's been done by the Trump administration, it's not enough just to get rid of the malignancy. We now need to use that opportunity to build and move forward on the agenda that brings us together this evening, which is really peace in the Middle East, an enduring peace. And that means working toward the agenda of a viable two-state solution. So let me thank J Street for all your help and support in organizing the letters that we sent, being a partner in that effort to send letters opposing annexation, both in the House and the Senate, and supporting our proposed amendments that made it clear that annexation was the wrong way to go. And I do believe that the pressure that we brought to bear and the voices that were sounded by those of us in the House and the Senate, those of you at J Street and other groups, made a difference. We sent a signal that annexation is the wrong way to go. And now let's just make sure we continue to build on those successes to achieve the goal of a two-state solution and peace in the Middle East. So thank you all very much. I don't know if you can still hear me.
Yes, we can.
Thank you all very much at J Street. And, you know, we look forward to working with you to win this election and restore integrity and values and principle to American foreign policy.
Thank you so much, Senator. The one thing you can't hear is, of course, the applause and the thanks from all of us. And I wish we were together in person and you would be able to hear how much people respect in this movement the leadership you've shown. I just want to say to folks that two of the best speeches that were made in this 2-year cycle of Congress on our issues were made by Senator Van Hollen on the floor of the Senate. One in relation to the BDS legislation and carving out the nuanced position that one can oppose the BDS movement, but one has to respect the First Amendment and the right of people to protest. And the other is your speech related to annexation and the amendment that you introduced. And so thank you so much for being the kind of senator that we need. We will support a dozen challengers who we hope are going to join you come November, come January in the Senate as part of a new majority. And we look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you for your leadership and your friendship, and we will be in touch.
And thank you, Jeremy, Alexandra, and everybody at J Street. Take care. Let's win this thing.
Terrific. And thank you to everybody who joined us. As I said at the beginning, I'm sorry that we were not able to be together in person. I hope that in the coming months and years ahead that we will be returning to some version of in-person normalcy, and we'll get to see each other and to work together and to celebrate together some good victories coming up in November and perhaps a change in what's going on here in Washington come January. We're going to put up on the screen now a slide again with all the ways that you can get involved in our work. Please do remember that Tuesday at 4:30 we have a reception with a series of other foreign policy groups where we'll be hearing from Senator Chris Murphy about a post-Trump progressive foreign policy and what that looks like. And we'll be regathering together as a group on Friday at 1 p.m. To talk about our post-convention debrief and our plans for action in the weeks and months ahead. So thanks again to everybody. Thanks to the great J Street staff that put this together, to Ilya Braverman, our political director, to all of those who are involved in the background. It was really a terrific evening and a wonderful opportunity to be together. Thanks so much, and we will be in touch.